Parti. Si vede il mondo
Andiamo.
in diretta. Chiudi.
Con tutto.
Perché l'immagine però... Ah, sei in tre. Eccoci qua. E si vedono anche le persone. Sei.
Che cos'è questa tecnologia?
Keep a seat for Amira as well.
Buonasera, benvenuti a tutti. Καλησπέρα σας. Καλώς ήρθατε εδώ στην Ελληνική που απόψε έχουμε την τιμή να φιλοξενήσουμε την ομιλία του Dr. Sergio Menelao. Welcome you all. I'm very glad to introduce Dr. Sergio Menelao, our tonight's speaker. Sergio Menelao is currently the Williams Fellow in Ceramic Metrology at the Fitch Lab at the British School of Athens. He's a young but yet experienced scholar with a bachelor's degree from the University of Cyprus and a PhD from the University of Sheffield. After his PhD, he held a postdoc scholarship at Koç University in Istanbul at the Research Center for Civilizations. Afterwards, he acted as the principal investigator of a project entitled Borderlands as Areas of Mobility and Connectivity during the Third Millennium BC, examining regional ceramic technologies between the East Aegean Islands, Western Anatolia, and Cyprus, at the University of Cyprus. His international background is quite impressive. Currently, his ongoing research project at the BSA expands on prior work on the Eastern Aegean through the investigation of ceramic traditions of the main early Bronze Age sites on the islands of Lemnos, Lesbos, and Chios, with the aim to reconstruct shifting mechanism of interaction networks between these islands and Anatolia. Today, his talk will focus on the island of Lemnos, which is particularly dear to us, and on the site of Poliochni, where the Italian archaeologist Bernardo Brea succeeded in organizing the mass of data and ceramic material resulting from the Italian excavation carried out in the 30s, and validating it through new excavation techniques published in the series of volumes Poliochni, Città Preistorica dell'Isola di Lemnos. Afterwards, Italian archaeologists worked at the site until the late 90s, and have always in the conservation of the archaeological area. Therefore, we are very pleased to give the floor to Dr. Sergio Menelao, who will give us a talk entitled Longevity, Creativity, and Mobility at the oldest city in Europe, Ceramic Insights from Prehistoric Poliochni. Sergio, the floor is yours.
Hello everyone. Καλησπέρα, buonasera. Before I start, I would like to thank Professor Emery Farinetti and the Director of the Italian Archaeological School, Professor Emanuele Patti, for their kind invitation. I am especially happy to be presenting my research on Poliochni, as the analysis of the ceramic material I am going to talk to you about this evening was only possible thanks to the thorough and well-documented excavations that took place many decades ago by the Italian school under the directorship of many important archaeological figures. Thanks to permits by the Italian school, the Ephorate of Antiquities of Lesbos, and the Conservation Directorate of the Hellenic Ministry of Culture, I was able to set up this project and reevaluate the ceramic material from the legacy excavations at Poliochni within the framework of my postdoctoral research, first at the University of Cyprus through the Border Project, and since last year, the Fitch Laboratory of the British School at Athens. The overall and ultimate aim of this research program is to contextualize, as Emery already said, to contextualize ceramic analytical results from a number of key sites in the Northeast Aegean region, including the islands of Limnos, Lesbos, Chios, and Samos, and selected sites in Western Anatolia, like Troy, in order to trace new evidence for connectivity patterns through the Third Millennium BC. And now turning to the topic of my talk, the objective is to give you an overview and present some first results from the compositional characterization and understanding of pottery production and exchange at Polyokni during the late 4th and through the late 3rd millennium BC. I am going to begin with a brief theoretical context and move on with information on the geographical setting and background research of the site, the methodology followed for the ceramic analysis, and finally I will discuss the main results and the broader implications for understanding the role of Polyokni in the social-cultural transformations of the early Bronze Age Aegean. So the island of Limnos is situated in the northeast Aegean, 63 kilometers west of the entrance to the Dardanelles Strait, and in close proximity to the islands of Gyokcheanda, or Imboros in Greek, and Tigos Eustratios. Its strategic location, facing the western Anatolian coast, places it on vital sea routes that connect the Aegean through the Hellespont with the Sea of Marmara and the Black Sea. And this accounts for Limnos' active involvement in the exploitation of metal ore deposits and its participation in extensive trade networks. Limnos has drawn archaeological attention as early as 1923, a century ago, when the Italian Archaeological School embarked on explorations with the goal of finding the origins of the Tyrrhenians and tracing the cultural connections between the northern Aegean and the Etruscan civilization, which followed the discovery of the Kaminia stele. And here, next to it, you see a recent publication by Professor Papi and others in this mysterious special find. Since its discovery in 1930, Polyokni has become the primary focus of the Italian Archaeological School at Athens and was systematically investigated in 1930 and to 36 by various excavators. Oh, sorry. Yeah, by various excavators, as you see on this, as you can see on this plan from the publication. And there was a second campaign between 1951 and 1956 by Luigi Bernabobrea, who completed the exemplary publications of the site in 2 volumes that appeared in 1964 and 1976. Several other important publications of Polyokni were produced in the late 90s and early 2000s, which you see on the bottom part of this slide. However, it is today well understood that Limnos hosts a web of prehistoric sites with comparable and equally significant material cultures, such as Koukonisi and Myrina, and recent evidence indicates the occupation of the island already in the 11th millennium BC, and you can see here the location of the 3 new sites that Eustratiu and his team discovered. Ever since its discovery, Polyokni has been extensively discussed in relation to major themes in Aegean Early Bronze Age, such as the emergence of proto-urbanism, social complexity and differentiation, social stratification in the presence of the elites, craft specialization, the appearance of new settlement plans and spatial organization, as well as seafaring and maritime connectivity. Due to its complex socio-cultural configuration, Polyokni was then regarded as one of the earliest urban settlements in the Aegean and has led scholars to designate it as the oldest city in Europe, and hence my title. Others have described it as a sea-oriented Anatolian-style community with major contacts with the Cyclades and mainland Greece, based on typological links with these regions, but also as an outpost of migrants from Troy, due to the impressive cultural resemblances between the 2 sites. What was mainly emphasized, though, was the role of Polyokni in maritime connectivity within the context of the adoption of metallurgy and control of metal trade routes towards the Black Sea, which is also reflected in mythology, like the presence of god Hephaestus, the Argonauts and the quest of the Golden Fleece, the development of pyrotechnology, and so on. But of course, material culture supports these ideas, as seen in the rich metal holes discovered in Polyochnid, including the so-called gold treasure of the yellow phase that you see on the top left, and which was recently analyzed alongside the one from Troy, and it showed close affinities in their provenance, most probably in the Central Anatolia, Afghanistan, or I don't know, it's not clear. But these metal holes also include copper and bronze artifacts, silver jewelry, steatite, and of course obsidian. Less impressive imports, of course, include ceramics, initially recognized typologically, and that's what triggered me to attempt and better understand the connectivity of Polyochnid through determination of provenance, given that our understanding of potting traditions of Limnos were so far extremely limited. And let us now zoom in on the material evidence from Polyochnid. So Polyochnid lies on a small hill on the eastern coast of Limnos that extends parallel to the sea. The hill was flanked by two small rivers and was inhabited continuously from the late 4th and through till the mid-2nd millennium BC. In his difficult task, Bernabo Brea has distinguished 7 settlement phases based on stratified architectural deposits and pottery seriation, which were arbitrarily assigned color names, and you can see these phases on their chronology on the table. The black phase corresponds to its foundation during the late Chalcolithic period and the transition to the early Bronze Age 1. It is documented in a limited area at the center of the hill and consists of small, circular, freestanding buildings. The blue phase, subdivided into Archaica and Evoluta, corresponds to the early Bronze Age 1 and includes a new well-planned settlement pattern with rectangular long-room buildings organized in insulae and enclosed by the first fortification walls. During this phase, the settlement shows evidence for political administration and communal coordination in the construction of public works, the most important of which are 2 large public structures located at either side of the city gates, and these are the ones you see here, the granary and the Bouleuterion. And although their exact function remains uncertain, are believed to have hosted special events like political gatherings and religious feasts. The subsequent green and red periods date to the early Bronze Age 2 and show evidence for the expansion of the settlement in size and population, including new house clusters in the west and modification of the fortifications. During this time, we see closer parallels in the material culture and settlement structure with that of Troy II than in the previous phases, reflecting increased connections between the 2 sites. The red phase shows an unbroken architectural development from green, but during this time, there seems to be socioeconomic changes reflected in extensive storage practices, use of metal jewelry, and holding of bronze artifacts. The subsequent, best preserved and documented yellow phase signifies a remarkable period of settlement growth and wealth, as shown in the presence of special buildings like Megaron 317, metallurgical workshops, and the famous gold treasures. But remarkable that transformations were also visible in the ceramic repertoire at Polyochnid. The majority of pottery in the black phase is characterized by lustrous dark, mainly black and dark brown slip surfaces, and the most emblematic shape among others is the high-footed bowl or fruit stand that testifies to, so this shape that testifies to close links with the southern Aegean and western Anatolia. The tradition of the blue phase continues, although with brown varnished surfaces and new decorations, and a greater variety of shapes, such as the first tribal cooking pots, as well as the first imports like color jars, pyxides with, incised decorations, goldware vessels, wood-furnished sauce bowls, and dark and light painted shirts. The green phase shows continuity in the shape repertoire and change from the preceding phase in the quality of polish that now declines. And at the same time, we have imports from the Cyclades, and they increased during the green phase. Pottery of the following red phase shows further changes in the shape repertoire, with the increase in large storage jars, pithoi, and tripod cooking pots, in addition to the appearance of new Anatolian-style shapes like these ones, tankards. And finally, the yellow phase documents the introduction of a greater number of novel shapes with Anatolian or Trojan affinities, like the devil's cups, a bell-shaped cup, the plates, shallow bowls, and at the same time we have new technological developments that appear around the same time across the Aegean. So in order to establish a chronotypological understanding of ceramic developments at Polyochni and gain more insights into production and consumption, a bottom-up approach was followed that included both the physical study at the macroscopic level and the laboratory-based methodology. In this context, our analytical program included different levels from the macroscopic examination to the study of geology and collection of raw materials and their analysis with thin section petrography and WD-XRF. The macroscopic examination of ceramic fresh shared breaks and surfaces with a Dynolight digital microscope allowed the recording of variation in color, texture, and recognizable fabric parameters. The macroscopic assessment of all available pottery at the Archaeological Museum of Mydina and the archaeological site of Polyochni allowed the identification of three main groups that you see on this slide. Macrofabric 1 includes vessels from all chronological phases made from coarse to very coarse brown, yellowish-brown fabrics with a combination of some light brown rocks and black minerals. And then a visibly different fabric series named that I called Macrofabric 2 is characterized by a homogeneously fired grayish-brown to buff clay paste and with mostly black inclusions. And then Macrofabric 3 is characterized by light red to buff clay paste and contains mostly gray transparent inclusions, as I hope you can see on the slide. Several wears and surface treatment modes could also be distinguished that exhibit some chronological correlation with certain settlement phases, as it's seen, for instance, in the common presence of dark burnished surfaces in the first phases of the settlement, and then while we go towards the yellow phase, we have more red slit surfaces. Based on these observations, a total of 78 samples were then selected for laboratory analysis. All samples were analyzed by thin section petrography at the Fitch laboratory. A subset of 65 samples were subjected to refiring tests in order to eliminate any variation in clay color caused by the ancient firing conditions and generate an optical distinction between different clay compositions. Subsequently, a subset of 53 samples were analyzed by WD-XRF in collaboration with Dr. Noemi Müller to further explore the intra- and intergroup variability. In addition, the geology of Limnos was studied through maps and literature, which led to the collection of 5 geological samples in order to explore the availability of suitable raw materials for pottery manufacture, but also to assess the intra-island lithological variability. The geological samples include 2 sediments from the vicinity of Polyochni, 1 beach sand from Agios Ioannis, and 2 rock samples from the western part of northwest part of Limnos. The 2 sediment samples were made into briquettes and fired to 700 and 900 degrees Celsius, and were subjected to petrographic and elemental analysis. And okay, so finally, after all this information, we can move to the analytical results. So Fabric 1 represents the main clay recipe, covering half of the sampled material and diachronically spanning the settlement. Despite an overall heterogeneity across the samples, we noted a strong association between functional criteria and chronology. And in particular, during the black and blue phases, the fabric is used mostly for the manufacture of tableware vessels like fruit stands, bowls. But in the red and yellow phases, it's used mostly for cooking pots and jars. The fabric is characterized by a combination of tough and intermediate volcanic rock fragments and sedimentary ones of various types. I'm not going to give you a lot of information about this because it's quite intense. And the provenance of this fabric can be assigned, as you can see from this black star, it can be assigned to the wider vicinity of the site, as we can assume from geological links with the lower Miocene pyroclastic formations cropping out in the area, and the Holocene alluvium and sedimentary rocks, which includes a lot of clays. And overall, it shows a good correlation with the mineralogy of this fabric. Fabric 2 contains exclusively volcanic rock fragments with some variability ranging from andesites to dacites. The lack of alteration and compositional range of these volcanic rocks suggests that the geological provenance of this fabric could be linked with the andesite outcrops in the Romanur-Catalagon unit, based also on mineralogical similarities with the geological samples from this area. Okay, so this could possibly suggest that these vessels are coming maybe from a different area on the island and are consumed in Polyokni. I'm not suggesting that they're coming from there, but so far we believe that it's not it wasn't made at Polyokni, these vessels. Fabric 3 has a fine volcanic mineralogy and is associated with only 2 tableware vessels that you see on the slide, and they date in the yellow phase. And these shapes are very characteristic for the early Bronze Age 3 and have strong typological parallels with the Dodecanese Islands, as well as Troy in the southwest Anatolian coast. So although mineralogical composition is not feasible to define provenance, its morphostylistic features do not exclude the possibility for manufacture on a different location on Limnos rather than Polyokni itself. So also this fabric is possibly from a different location on the island, or maybe even a different place. At the end of the early Bronze Age, so during the yellow phase, several technological changes are observed in the exploitation of resources, as well as the processing and manipulation of the raw materials. In particular, there seems to be some degree of specialization and form-specific recipes. And for example, fabric 4 is used for the manufacture of debas only. Fabric 5 is used for the manufacture of bowls, and fabric 6 is used for the manufacture of jars. The non-plastic inclusions of all these sand-tempered fabrics consist of varying proportions of well-sorted and rounded quartz and felsic minerals. And what is important here is to note the similarity between the pottery fabrics that you see here and how close they match with the geological samples. Of course, you can see some textural differences, but this is also confirmed through the elemental analysis. And you can see here that, okay, they don't fall on top of each other or anything, but they are all towards the same, they float around the same area on the PCA. Now, in terms of the extra-insular outreach and connectivity of Polyokni, the analysis has shown some very interesting new links that were previously unsuspected and correspond to different production centers and provenance locations. In specific, fabric 7 is used for the manufacture of storage and cooking jars and is characterized by a range of tuff-related rocks, varying from rhyolitic to andesitic, as well as diorite porphyry. Despite some similarities with fabrics 1 and 2, this fabric is not compatible with the geology of Limnos, and instead, according to matching petrographic fabrics, you can see here how similar they are. So these are from Polyokni and these are from Urlu in Gökçeada. So we suggest that these pots are consumed in Polyokni, but they have a provenance on Gökçeada, Imbros. The elemental analysis of Fambric 7 in comparison with the local Fambrics from Polyogny also supports this suggestion. The results from cluster analysis indicate the presence of one main chemical cluster associated with the volcanic related groups, but differences in the elemental composition allow for the subdivision of clusters that correspond with the petrographic groups. And here you can see Fambric 7 distinguished on the basis of lower strontium and magnesium oxide. Principal component analysis has shown a considerable overlap of all volcanic Fambrics over here. However, Fambric 7 separates off better on this plot, and you can see, yes, this one, you can see these red dots, that they're different, they separate off from the rest of the local volcanic Fambrics. As in the case of Fambric 7, our analysis could distinguish for the first time imports from other centers in the Northeast Aegean region that had previously not been suspected typologically. And so we identified two different Fambrics that can be assigned with a provenance on different locations on Lesbos. These include the metabasite Fambric that you see on the top left, which is linked with the subophiolites in Southeast Lesbos. And the Fambric you see in the center is diagnostic for its high presence of pyroclastic rocks, which is linked with ignimbrites in the north-central part of Lesbos. Finally, a third import characterized by an intermediate volcanic composition, this one, might have reached limnus from the Ula region on the Anatolian coast, but its provenance remains non-diagnostic because we don't have, we need to compare more our results with pottery from that region. Beyond this, a number of imports from the Central Aegean and different Cycladic islands could be also distinguished, previously only implied at the typological level, that correspond to storage vessels of the red and yellow phases. And this includes samples with high-grade metamorphic rocks and talc schists that have a provenance in the Western Cyclades and possibly Gea or Sifnos. More contacts are outlined by three more Fambrics, of which the one you see on the left and center are probably linked with the green schist fascists that predominate within the Cycladic blue schist units, and possibly Gea Island, but we need to confirm this with more comparative work. However, a different production center in the Western Cyclades of Eastern Attica, which form part of the Attic Cycladic crystalline complex, cannot be excluded. Finally, the bottom right image, this one, the low medium grade metamorphic Fambric, can be linked with the provenance on Amorgos Island and is again represented by a transport color jar of the early Bronze Age too. So it is not surprising that such a compositional distinction was also confirmed by WDXRF on the basis of trace element concentrations. And when compared to the local Fambrics, you can see that they separate off on the top right of the PCA plot. And with this, we're reaching the concluding remarks. It was quite a short presentation and some main outcomes of this project. So the first main result concerns the longevity of pottery making traditions at Polyogny. The application of the chain operator approach revealed both elements of continuity and change within different stages of the manufacturing process across different chronological phases. As you can see in the top image, Fambric 1 emerges as, so here, Fambric 1 emerges as the predominant clay recipe, yet variations in texture and mineral composition between phases underscore a functional and chronological correlation, which is reflected in the more frequent presence of volcanic rocks in the yellow phase samples and a decrease in vegetal matter from the red phase onwards. The elemental analysis of Fambric 1 showed a meaningful intra-group variation according to the intended function of pottery vessels, as I hope you can see here, where storage, serving, and cooking pots could be distinguished. No particular associations could be identified between shapes and forming techniques. As all evidence points to hand-built pots, but color and surface treatment modes imply the concurrent existence of more than one production units. Towards the end of the 3rd millennium BC and during the Yellow Phase, we see several changes in raw material exploitation strategies and technological choices in pottery manufacture, evident also in transformations in finishing techniques and firing strategies. The ceramic changes and specialized craftsmanship observed during the Red and Yellow Phases of Polyochny coincide with significant transformations in the socioeconomic organization of the site. And this follows a broader trend seen across the Eastern Aegean. This trend is exemplified by the emergence of a distinct set of drinking and serving ceramic vessels, often referred to as Anatolianizing, or the Castri group in the Cyclades, which shows influences and interactions with Western Anatolia. Now, the second main outcome of this research concerns connectivity. Firstly, we were able to distinguish production locations and potentially intra-island mobility as shown through fabrics 2 and 3. But as for regional and interregional developments, our work has most significantly revealed Polyochny's interconnectedness, which was previously suggested through the circulation of metals and obsidian. Polyochny exhibits significant morphostylistic affinities with the Cycladic Campos group and the Troad region, although this has not proven analytically. Several suspected connections with the Central Aegean, including various Cycladic islands, as well as unsuspected links in the Northeast Aegean, Imbros, Lesbos, and potentially Western Anatolia, were also identified, which highlight Limnos' extensive engagement with different Aegean regions. The identification of imports from Imbros and Lesbos, together with evidence for the circulation of metals, suggests an overlapping route of connections with the north-south axis, and this is a sea lane. So this area, this is a sea lane that favored the voyage of prehistoric boats from northeast to southwest and vice versa by crossing the open sea. And it is not a coincidence that early Bronze Age sites in the Sporades like Agios Petros and Skiros were centers for the distribution of Median obsidian, while Limnos was a center for trading metals. Therefore, the transformation of Polyochny into an urban center and one of the earliest maritime hubs during the early Bronze Age was driven by its strategically advantageous position along sea routes connecting the Black Sea, northwest Anatolian mainland, and the central and western Aegean. Without any doubt, the technological advancements and innovations accompanying metal usage and seafaring caused substantial socioeconomic and cultural transformations within Polyochny, which I discussed at the beginning of my presentation, and are evident in, this is too early, no, which are evident in radical changes of the settlement layout, enhancement of fortifications, and shifts in social organization. So this very connectivity and transmission of knowledge have allowed the creation and manifestation of new identities and social distinction in Polyochny, expressed through the exploitation of new distant resources, as well as creative and innovative ways of doing things, and reflected in the drastic transformations in metallurgy and pottery technology. This coincides with abrupt transformations on a regional and interregional level, accompanied by new economic practices and facilitated through navigational technological advancements that led to an aggressively, to quote, an aggressively interconnected Mediterranean, as Burbank has mentioned. And before I finish, I want to thank you everyone for your attention. But before this, I want to thank again Professor Papi for the chance to analyze this material through your permits, and you will soon be able to read more on this on a forthcoming paper that we submitted a few weeks ago, hopefully. And with this, I would like to thank you all for your attention and look forward to your comments and questions.
Less is more.
Yes,
Less is more.
Good.
Yes, it's a lot much more time for questions as well.
Oh, no, that's fast.
No, that's nice. That's what we want. And we enjoyed a very interesting talk, and especially I think you offered us a lot of, food for thoughts also for our research in Limnos for later periods. So that was very interesting. So I'm sure that many people here, also young people working in Limnos, they will have questions for our speaker. So the floor is open for discussion. Okay, please.
Thank you very much for your lecture. I have two curiosities. The first one is if did you consider to draw comparisons with the site of Ricanera in the western part of the island? And the second curiosity, you mentioned also some things from the northern part of the island. So, where are the clay deposits in the northern part of the island, and how far do they are from the site of Polioptli? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I am considering of expanding on the other two known sites. I mean, there are a lot more, but at least Kokonisi and Myrina, Ricanera are the two equivalent, let's say, chronologically also to Polioptli. So yes, I would love to expand more and compare between these three sites and see what really happens in Limnos, because with only Polioptli, it's not. I cannot really generate comments about the whole island, but yeah. And about your second comment, yeah, so what I showed are not, I didn't identify clay deposits in that area. It was, okay, this geological prospection was not extensive, so I just collected whatever I could for the very short time that I had. I only had, I don't know, 3 days on the island. So the plan is to go back and do a more extensive clay prospection. But what I can say, based on the ones I collected from the northwest, is that they seem very close mineralogically to Fabric 2 than the rest of the geological samples I collected from close to Polioptli. Yeah.
Please.
Thank you very much for your invitation. I would like to ask you to clarify something that I did not understand. Every time you're talking about the surroundings from a specific zone, let's say from the red zone, are you talking about the oldest samples that you get or about its time? Because if that is the case, do you imply that when we live in a zone, the yellow zone, we have abandoned the red zone?
Sorry, you mean phase? So,
Yes.
I
mean, that's there are many differences between the red and the yellow zone, right? And you don't find pottery from the yellow periods in the red zone, right?
you mean the shapes? You mean if I see differences?
The materiality and the techniques.
Yes, I see differences in the shapes. I can go back to the slide. No. Yes, there are new shapes.
The question is that.
Sorry, in technologies, you mean? Sorry, can you repeat?
Yes, I can rephrase. The question is that when we live in the yellow zone, the red zone is abandoned, or do we find also ceramics of the yellow periods in the
You mean in the layers? You mean if we find red phase pottery in the yellow
Or
phase.
vice versa, or vice versa. Because it's very strange to me that there are no red period ceramics in the yellow zone, which is later. So you extend the sites, the city, but you do not take the pottery with you, you do not take the ceramics with you, you do not use the old things.
But I think pots are not meant to be used for a very long time. No, not really. Also, the samples that I analyzed are coming from different areas in Polyochni. They're not all from one context. So because I had to adapt to the limits of the material. I couldn't analyze everything. It was impossible because the best pieces are at the museum. So I had to rely on what I could find in
I know fermentation may
Okay,
sound
yeah.
very simple to your
Yes. Sometimes you can find mixed deposits, mixed layers. Yes, it's possible. Yeah, and it's possible that some technologies continue into the new phase. Yes, but I don't know.
more like clear.
In this case, it was quite clear. I think it was. I could see some continuities, but I could also see some clear changes between the phases.
But it's very surprising and interesting architectural mistaking about the site, I think.
Yeah.
This kind of conclusions about the show.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Since we move to sample strategies, I have a question. It doesn't concern the case of Limnos only, but based on your experience, do you find that there are specific contexts or, say, specific ceramic assemblages that are more useful in order to detect patterns, or especially patterns of connectivity? Based on your experience, it means also, is there something strategy that you employ while choosing pieces? You mentioned the best pieces. What do you mean with this best pieces?
The best
For us,
preserves.
that we are not ceremonies.
Yeah.
And, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, of course, we follow a specific, methodology. And I mean, depending on the project on the side, you work on the quality preservation of the assemblage, you have to adapt in what you choose. So in this case, I used the old material from the old excavations. And as you know, most of it is exhibited in, the best preserved pots are exhibited at the museum, yeah? So I couldn't take samples from those. But that's why I usually I always start with a macroscopic examination. So I use the small dynamite, the digital microscope. So I try to cover almost everything I can see, because it's easy, it's fast, and from there on, I go ahead and I choose which samples I want to analyze photographically or elementally. So that's a strategy that I follow, and I think most of pottery people are doing the same.
As far as archaeological
Context, yes. Again, okay. In this case, I didn't follow a specific. I didn't target on specific areas or context. I try to cover as much as possible. And take as many samples as possible from what was there, because this material is very old. Bernardo Brea tried to put everything together.
That's
It's
why
an
I said it's
amazing
not
work.
related to
but-
Limnos only. But
No, yeah.
Okay.
And about imports, yes, this might be biased. I was lucky to find what I found, but maybe if I took samples from a different context, maybe I wouldn't have been able to find all this. Or maybe I could find more, or maybe different connections. But because as I showed in one of the first slides, Bernardo Brea and others, they already found, they suspected about these Cycladic and mainland connections. Those I couldn't find. I don't know where they are, but some of them, whatever I could find, I took samples from.
Thank you. Any other question?
I have a question. Thank you so much for the work, first of all, and for your talk. Do you have any idea of the content of the pottery coming from Cairn or Ross and other islands? Because you talk about storage, pottery or transport.
Transport, yes, yeah. No, I have no idea what they contain, but we know from literature and other places that these transport jars in the third millennium, maybe they contained, most likely they contain wine or, but I don't even know if there is an organic residue analysis, analytical study on this. I don't know if someone has done it. But I would say that it's something, is it wine?
Because
Is it
this
olive oil?
topic
I
is
don't know.
really, really important to best understand the connectivity.
But what is interesting is that almost all of these imports are, okay, not the ones from Imbros, from Georgiana, but the Cycladic ones are either transport jars or pixie desks, this kind of types, vessel types. But the ones that I found from Georgiana are, again, okay, storage pots and cooking forks.
Why?
And they're much more than the Cycladic ones. I don't know, 10 samples for Fabric 7. So yeah, I don't have an answer, I think.
In Festia, we have a lot of wonderful assemblages of Mycenaean style pottery and geometric. If you are interested, well,
Why not?
probably it's too late for you.
It's never too late.
Any other?
Thank you very much. I'm not sure if I noticed anything in your life about the specific fabric or storage jars. I mean these large storage jars that have been in those days so that, they are placed inside houses and they are really big storage jars. Do you have do you see a specific fabric for this kind of pots?
Are you talking about the Cycladic type, the horizontal handle transport jars, or the storage jars, you said?
My is like more manual.
The pithy.
The large ones.
Because in the mainland we have a specific kind of fabric for the storage jars. Usually. So you see this
No, there is.
specific kind of construction for storage jars.
Thank you, Salo. No, I didn't see a pattern in this. No, but I think most of them are. Yes, most of them fall into Fabric 1. And as I said, maybe it wasn't clear enough. Fabric 1, so I have 78 samples. Fabric 1 contains 40, so it's more than half of the samples. So most of the local storage jars are made in Fabric 1, but let me just also say that, okay, sorry for this. You have to see everything once again. Yeah, here. So, photographically, I couldn't distinguish between the different types in Fabric 1. They all seemed quite homogeneous, but with some variation because of texture, But when we did WDXRF, we found that there is a pattern in function in the function of pots. So I don't know if you can see the blue ones are serving tableware vessels, and then reds are cooking and green are storage. So there is something that it seems like they were using maybe the same lithological formations, but slightly different deposits, maybe. But this I couldn't see photographically.
Yes, that makes sense because it's different to different fabric for tableware, for example, that you
Yeah, but
It
what-
won't be small pots, small containers, but for the large containers.
But this is about the coarseness. They're very coarse, all of them. Despite being tableware vessels, they're coarse as being pithos. I mean, but still. Yeah.
And the other thing, if I may ask another question about the Vepas cups,
Mhm.
which are calling Vepas cups. So you said that they're probably coming from Troy with a question mark? No.
No. One second. So Fabric 4 is used specifically for Vepas cups. But Fabric 4 is very local. It's the same as Fabric 5 and Fabric 6, very similar, okay? And these are the geological samples, and if you compare them, they're the same. And these samples, geological samples are from next to Polyogny. So these the yellow phase Devas cups are local. I didn't find any non-local Devas cups. Only the tankards of the red phase seem to be linked with this Fabric 2 that I said is probably from different location on Linux. Thank you.
Please.
Fantastic presentation and really close to my heart to see all this work being done. You kind of partly answered my question with the last question, because I was wondering why we suddenly have so many more fabrics in the yellow phase, but it's maybe just the case that they're just different local, quite close to each other. But does it indicate some kind of real change? It obviously doesn't indicate imports. That was my first thought, but does it indicate some kind of, changes in technology and so on?
Thank you, Michael. Yes, a lot of changes actually. Not only we see the exploitation of new raw material sources, we also see changes in the manipulation of clays, because we are talking about processed, fine, more refined clays compared to before the yellow phase. But we also see changes in finishing techniques, the surface treatment of pots, which also relates to firing, because they are fired in higher temperatures, so that also affects the surface. So I think it's like interlinked changes, technological changes. But not only technological, I mean, the choice of new clay sources, I think it's also something, no, it is technological, because this affects forming and firing. But for example, forming, we don't see the use of wheel on these pots, and which is the case for other islands. In other islands, we can see the use of the wheel, but not on Limnos. So when I was analyzing some herring from Samos, for example, I thought, there is a link between all of these stages. But then on Limnos, we're missing this forming, the change in the forming technique. So, yeah, but we see a lot of changes from the yellow phase on.
Hi, Sergis. Thank you very much for this presentation. It was amazing. My question concerns your experience in other sites that you indicated in the presentation. Now that you're more familiar with the fabrics from Polyogny, can you recognize it elsewhere?
Macroscopically, you mean?
Even in terms of analysis?
I mean, okay, this one is, maybe not these ones, because they're not very diagnostic, these ones. It's only quartz and some, random, common minerals, let's say. But the main one, Fabric 1 and Fabric, I think, yeah, it's easy. Although at first, when I saw, I mean, years ago, when I was not familiar with Egina, let's say, Colonna, or, these andesite fabrics. Or the ones that I found also on Samos, because there is something similar. I thought, maybe all of them are from Egina, because they have this intermediate volcanic rocks, but no, I mean, you can distinguish them, I mean, when you see it. I think, I don't know.
That's very important. Thank you very much.
Let's go ahead.
We have also a question through application.
Sorry if I missed it at the start, but I was wondering if you were going to do SEM to look at fire and fire technologies, which is nice to mention.
Yeah, it was the idea, but the first idea, I mean, but then I'd rather publish what I have and then maybe do what I can do more in the, if I can do more in the future, but no, I haven't done it yet.
Because, do you think there are differences in fire, especially with the yellow phase?
So can you repeat that?
Sorry. Do you think there are differences with the firing technology as well as the clay processing technologies? You said that in the yellow phase.
Yeah, I mean, I can see this. I didn't have a lot of pictures about technology, but I can see changes in the, even petrographically, I can see that the ground mass is different. It's what we call in petrography optical activity. It's there is less optical activity in the ground mass, which implies that the temperature is higher. And I can see this very consistently in the yellow phase, fabric 1 and 2. Maybe not as much in these ones, which makes me think that we have a specialized manufacturer in the yellow phase, so more different units probably.
I think we do have a question from remote.
Yes.
Yes, read it out.
So we have a question from Ms. Rania Koka, which is asking, her question is about Fabric 7, the one which is associated with Imbros Island. So her question is, have you really tried to define the fabric of the tripod cooking pots from all phases of polyamide?
Sorry, can you repeat that? Because I missed the link between Gyokje and tripod cooking pots.
She's saying that Fabric 7 is associated with Imbros Island, right?
Yes.
And then she said that this fabric seems to be also related with the typical tripod cooking pots, which are present in all phases of polyamide.
No, I mean, it's a different fabric. It's just, it's a different fabric.
Any other question? You see that we had a lively discussion at the end? That was nice. Okay, so you can join us for a glass of wine just in the foyer outside the door. And we thank once again our speaker.
Thank you.